Father, we come to you this evening, and we are thankful, God, to be able to come. We're thankful that you have called us out of darkness and into the light of your glorious Son, Jesus Christ. And we want to be in fellowship with you tonight. God, one of the important tasks that you've given us is to be fathers and mothers, to bear your image in parenting in this world, and to point our kids to Christ. And so we come here tonight because that's an area that we would all say we're deficient in. And we are looking to you and to your word to understand what you have to say to us in this hour about how we parent our kids in a God-honoring, Bible-focused, Christ-centered way. And so God, would you come, would you speak through your word and use him as an instrument to instruct and teach and train us? God, would you give us listening ears? Would you give us willing hearts? Would you help us to be the wise man from the Proverbs who heeds instruction? God, may we not be the fool who despises instruction and goes on to their own demise. God, may we learn, may we recognize patterns of sin in our own hearts and our lives. God, may we see by your grace where we're doing things wrong, and may we also, by your grace, apprehend where we're doing things right. God, we might both be convicted and encouraged by the gospel as it speaks to and touches on parenting. So God, bless this time. Bless him tonight as he teaches, God. Give him clarity. Give him wisdom. Give him the ability to articulate the truth. And we ask all of these things, God, for your glory, for the strengthening of our homes, and for the prayers of the gospel in the next generation. Amen.
Amen. Good evening. Good evening. That was okay. How many of you did not get a list of books? Everybody got one? Okay. I'm not going to talk about it. I'll try to highlight a couple of books each week as we go on, but I highly recommend all the books on that list. And maybe not every sentence of every book, but in the main, they're really, really, really good stuff on parenting. And I've been doing parenting classes for how long, dear? A long time. And it would be almost impossible for me to take all the stuff I've taught over these years and sort it out and say, oh, I got this idea from that guy, and I got this idea from that guy, and I got this one from this guy. I'd have 1,000 footnotes if I identified every single source. But let me just say that I've gotten a lot of help from these books. And there's one book on here that's probably the oldest book, Withhold Not Correction. That was very formative when my wife and I were raising our boys back 40 plus years ago. And there's lots of new stuff on here. So order them all from Amazon and read them all by next week. And there'll be a quiz. Okay? I highly recommend them all. It's good stuff. Last time we tried to underscore the importance of parenting by looking at some of the challenges and difficulties of raising children in the culture in which we live. And I'm not going to go back and rehearse all that. How many were not here last week? Okay, is that on Facebook somewhere, Jared? Or
Yes, Andrew shared the video. He did it on his phone, and we're capturing audio as well, so we'll make that available either on Facebook or on the church.
okay, so if you want to go back and catch up on last week's, you're welcome to. And welcome tonight for the first time. Glad you're here. Parenting is hard work. I think we made that clear last time, especially raising kids in this age and in a culture that is so far removed from the standards of Scripture. But we're not in this alone. There are lots and lots and lots of encouragements from Scripture, and let me just give you another one besides the one I gave you last week. Paul writes to the Colossians in Colossians 1:9-12, "For this reason also, we've not ceased to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of His will for parenting." Okay, Paul didn't have parenting in the original text, all right? But this is the Tim Hoak Revised Version. And it applies. What he's saying here applies to parenting. It sure does. You may be filled with the knowledge of His will for parenting in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so that you may walk in a manner as a parent, worthy of the Lord, to please Him in all respects, bearing fruit in every good work, including parenting, and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all power according to His glorious might for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience in parenting. And if there's any area of life where we need steadfastness and patience, it's in parenting. Did you see that lens just pop out of my glasses? And if I put them on and try to read, it's going to be sad. So give me just a minute to pop this. I think I can do it. It happens frequently, but thank you, Jared. If I fail in the next 30 seconds, I'll give it back to you. Who started counting? Are you the one that held me to 6 o'clock last time?
Yeah. Oh, I need that to happen again.
Don't y'all check IDs when people walk in here? Okay, that was less than 30, by the way. All right? Okay. Thank you. All right, so if there's any area where we need steadfastness and patience, and we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight, it's in parenting. And what does that text tell us? He's praying that we'll be strengthened, that we increase in the knowledge of God, and that we'll be strengthened with all power according to His glorious might for the attaining of all steadfastness. Who is on our side in this business? God is. And you just think for 2 seconds about who God is and what He did. And that glorious might is available for us in parenting. He spoke everything into being just by His word, out of nothing. Let there be light. Boom, there's light. Let the earth bring forth vegetation and all the animals and the seas and all the creatures of the sea. Boom, just by His word. Is that might and power? Yes. And that God is able to strengthen you and me for the task of parenting these incorrigible, squirrely, knuckle-headed, strong-willed, sinner children of ours. Now, I was describing my children. I don't know about you, but I kind of think you probably have those kind of kids too. And that God who spoke everything into being just like that is able to strengthen you for this task. So, the picture I will paint of parenting is a hard picture in many respects. Let's not say that there are no joys and delight in parenting. It's full of that stuff. But you got to be committed for the long haul to parenting. And in that process, God Himself is on our side to help us with parenting. So tonight I want to move on to talk about requirements for parenting and then the role of parents. What kind of things are required of us to be faithful parents? And then what is it that we're called to do? What's our role as parents? So let's talk about requirements for parenting. And you'll catch on pretty quickly to the kinds of things I have in mind here. I want to start with the fear of the Lord. Proverbs says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. The fear of the Lord is the instruction for wisdom, and before honor comes humility. Do not let your heart envy sinners, but live in the fear of the Lord always. Do we need wisdom to train up our children? Yes or no? Where does wisdom start? The fear of the Lord. Now let me be real practical about that. We need to fear the Lord more than we fear our kids. We need to fear the Lord more than we fear what others think about how we're doing. We need to fear the Lord more than we fear the worldly experts. We need to fear the Lord more than we fear what the neighbors think about how we're doing. And don't think that your neighbors don't see what you're doing in raising kids. When you stick your head out the door and call them to come in, and then you call them to come in again. You all have never had to call them in 3 times, have you? And you call them to come in again? We need to fear the Lord more than we fear what our neighbors think. We need to fear the Lord more than we regard our own comfort and ease. Children don't generally pick convenient times to misbehave. You know something about that? The times they require focused, concentrated attention don't always coincide with our spare moments. It just doesn't work that way. They're especially spontaneous, teachable, prime opportunities to drive home a lesson, to illustrate a principle, to make a point, to seize a moment of peculiar tenderness and vulnerability. Those moments don't usually come during the 15 minutes we blocked out for family worship. They don't come at halftime in the really intense game. They don't. They come often at the most convenient moments, the busiest times. But when those moments come, one of the things that will enable us to seize those moments, to stand firm and hold the line and to speak the truth and not to cave under pressure, is the fear of the Lord. We love the smile of our children, but we need to love the smile of God more. And if the fear of the Lord is working in us, then when those moments come that they need our absolute undivided attention, if the fear of the Lord is working in us, we'll seize those moments. And I describe the fear of the Lord as seeking the smile of God and avoiding His frown. It's pretty simple. We want the smile of God and we want to avoid His frown. So, the fear of the Lord. We need to fear the Lord more than all these other things, okay? That's a requirement for parenting. Number 2, courage. And that's closely related to the fear of the Lord. Deuteronomy 31:6. I think I have it up here. Be strong and courageous. This is Moses talking to the children of Israel before they go into the promised land. Okay, and he says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at them. Who's them? The Canaanites. All the nations are going to have to defeat when they cross the Jordan River and go into the promised land. Do not be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid of them. But now just take that principle and bring it over here to parenting. Be strong and courageous and do not fear them. Who is them? Your children. Or the people who don't approve of the way you're raising your children. It takes courage to be a biblical parent in this day. We need courage to do the right thing with our kids. We need courage to say no. And that's not the only thing we say to our kids. We'll talk later on, probably in the next, 5 or 6 weeks, we'll talk about working to find ways to say yes to our children. Okay? It doesn't usually take a whole lot of courage to say yes. It takes courage to say no. We need courage to risk their disapproval. We talked briefly about that last time. We need courage to go against the imaginary crowd your kids will often hold up to you. Everybody has one. Everybody's going to be there. Everybody's going. How many is everybody? On a good day, how many is everybody? Good call, 2. Maybe. Out of a supposed crowd of 30 other kids in their class or neighborhood or whatever. Everybody's going to be there. And if that's not a good place for them to go or a good thing for them to do, it takes courage to say no. We need courage to enforce a standard of modesty with our daughters that has nearly disappeared. I could get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The lack of modesty is not the fault of the fashion industry or of Hollywood, it's dad's. If you let your daughter walk out of the door of your house immodestly dressed. Whose fault is that? Dad, you're the head of that home. It's yours. That takes courage. That takes courage. Number three, a gentle and compassionate posture. We've talked a lot about courage and strength and saying no, but we need a gentle and compassionate posture. Proverbs 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. That doesn't mean we're never firm. Doesn't mean we lessen our standards. It doesn't mean we let our kids walk all over us. But we must never equate effective parenting with the volume of our voice or the sternness of our face or the posture of opposition. Okay? We need a gentle and compassionate posture. I hollered way too much when our kids were little. True? My wife is saying true. It is. I did. It was loud. It was angry. It was, ah. A gentle answer turns away wrath. What was one of the things that made the Lord Jesus so attractive and inviting? Come unto me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. Was there an occasion where Jesus drove the money changers out of the temple? You bet your boots. But his posture, his attitude, his demeanor was so often gentle and lowly. And why do you think sinners had a ready audience with Jesus? Why do you think they could always get to him? Why do you think they could always come to him? Was he hollering in their faces about their adultery and their deception and their thievery and all the rest of it? Did he say, oh, it's okay if you're a thief? No, of course not. But he saw what was working in him. A gentle and compassionate posture. And that gave him an audience with them. And it will give us an audience with our children when we have to say the hard, firm things. If we've established a general atmosphere of a gentle and compassionate posture with our children. Number 4, we need wisdom. We've talked about this. If there were ever a situation in which you felt profoundly you needed wisdom, it's parenting. And this takes us back to the fear of the Lord, and that takes us to our knees, and that takes us back to the Bible. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. May I encourage you to live in your parenting days in the book of Proverbs? You want wisdom? What is the date today? January the 23rd. You should have read the 23rd chapter of Proverbs today. There's 31 chapters of Proverbs. There's 30 or 31 days in the month. So it's a no-brainer. Whatever day of the month it is, that's the chapter of Proverbs you read. And you do that for a year, and you'll have worked through the whole book 12 times. And pretty soon you find yourself, you read one line of the proverb, and you anticipate the second line. It comes to you because it's starting to get ingrained in you. And there's so much wisdom in the book of Proverbs for us as parents. One of the books I'll recommend is Signposts from Proverbs. Anybody have this? Jared's got it. It's out of print. You can't get it anymore. I mean, I've seen it on Amazon, a used copy for about 30 or 40 bucks. We have permission to make copies of this book. These are just Xerox copies, and we'll bind them and put them together for you, and we'll charge you what it costs to copy them. It won't be much. And I'll try to make these available in the next, 2 or 3 weeks. But the benefit of this book, it's a categorical, a topical arrangement of the book of Proverbs. So there's pages in here on all the Proverbs that have something to do with talking. All the Proverbs about pride, trust and safety. How do you act towards other people? How do you act towards animals? Money, lying and hypocrisy, envy and jealousy, gossip, listening, quarrels, patience, self-control, the fear of the Lord, moderation of greed, family life, and on and on. It's all topically arranged for you right here. So when you have to deal with your child and it's a hard thing, and you really want to root that discipline in the Bible, which we ought to be doing all the time anyway, this book is a great resource. The spiral bounding of my book that I've had for years is just about gone. I used it at school all the time for our school kids. So this is a great, great resource. We need wisdom to parent our children, and the book of Proverbs is chock full of that for us. We need perseverance and consistency. Parenting is a long-haul operation. Opting out is not an option. Throwing in the towel is not an option. Not that I think any of you would throw in the towel and put your kids up for adoption. You wouldn't do that. But in the middle of a season when it's really difficult, and if you haven't hit those seasons yet, they will come. When it's really, really difficult, it's really easy to throw in the towel and say, I've spanked him 7 times in the last 2 weeks, and he's still not getting it. I give up. That's not an option. Okay? Giving up is not an option. We need perseverance and consistency. Bailing out because it doesn't feel like it's working is not an option. Throwing in the towel and letting them have their own way because the fight is too much and I'm too worn out. Up and down, off and off standards are not an option. How confusing is that to a child? So we need perseverance and consistency. Oh, there's the long haul operation. Just keep going. And number 5, we need a close, number 5. I think actually it's number 6. A close, consistent, genuine walk with God. Taking on the task of parenting is one of those defining moments in our Christian lives. It calls for newer and deeper levels of that ongoing, arduous, sin-exposing, flesh-withering, self-denying grace of sanctification. Becoming a parent is one of the most exhilarating experiences on the planet. Knowing that you had a part in the formation of that living, breathing, squirming little human being is almost incredible. You'll forget a lot of things. You'll never forget the day your children were born. That's been 40 plus years ago for me. And I still see it. Our oldest son, Benjamin, is 46. As soon as his shoulders cleared the birth canal, I was standing up at the head. Yeah, they let fathers in the delivery room way back then, okay? I was standing up at the head, and my dear wife was pushing with all of her might. And out came the head, and as soon as his arm cleared the birth canal, his hand shot up. And it was, hi, Dad, I'm going to be a 5-point Calvinist when I grow up. He is too, by the way. I'll never forget that. And when number 2, when Aaron was born, he was bigger than the doctor thought he was going to be, and his head comes out, and they've been telling my wife to push. His head comes out, and all of a sudden, don't push, wait, don't push. The doctor's mouth dropped open. He saw how wide his shoulders were. It's don't push. And he had to do a little more episiotomy so she wouldn't tear all over the place, and out came this broad-shouldered kid. It was like, okay, it wasn't like yesterday. It might have feels kind of like the day before, but you'll never forget that. Becoming a parent is incredible. But becoming a parent does something else. It exposes a sinful side of your heart that you didn't know you had. Two huge sanctifying events in the life of every Christian. If they're a Christian before they get married. One is when you get married. And number 2 is when you have kids. You didn't know you were so stinking selfish till you got married. True? Yeah, because you never lived with somebody like that before. And it happens again when you have children. Wow. You can't believe. Could we put up on the screen here some of the things you've thought about your children? I don't think we want to do that. It's sanctifying in the sense that it exposes a part of us that we didn't see it. The holy work of parenting will call you to new levels of self-control. It demands a self-denial that goes deeper and farther than ever before, and it will require of you greater and deeper measures of patience and wisdom, and it will drive you to your knees over and over again. It'll humble you repeatedly. And what does that mean? It means we better maintain a close, consistent, genuine walk with God. Remember, God gives grace to the humble. There's not much more humbling than having children. Have any of you who have children, have you yet to be humbled by them? Nobody's raising their hand. But being humbled is not a bad place to be, because God gives grace to the humble. I have a friend who now lives out in California who used to say to me all the time, stay down low, stand at the bottom of the hill, because grace flows downhill. It goes to the humble. God is opposed to the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. And boy, do we need grace for parenting. And so, one of the requirements for parenting is a close, consistent, genuine walk with God. It's not going to be easy to maintain your walk with God while being a faithful parent. Parenting, this is a quote from Ted Tripp in his book, Shepherding a Child's Heart. Parenting will mean that you can't do all the things that you could otherwise do. It will affect your golf handicap. It'll mean your home doesn't look like a picture from Better Homes and Gardens. It will impact your career. It will alter the kind of friendships you'll be available to pursue. It will influence the kind of ministry you're able to pursue. It will modify the amount of time you have for hunting, television, or how many books you read. It'll mean you can't develop every interest that comes along. The costs are high. And I think that's especially true for moms. Because moms, in many ways, bear a pretty big share of the load of parenting, because they're the ones who are home with the kids more than dads are often. And so, husbands, if I may say a word to you, see to it that your wife gets some time to herself to pursue her walk with God. You give the kids their bath and give her a break. Trade off on Sundays when you're training them to sit in the worship service so she can listen to a whole sermon all the way through from start to finish, without having to wipe noses and take them out and change diapers and go feed the child and all the rest. Let her trade off, okay? Help your wife to maintain a close, personal, consistent walk with God. There's so many other things that we add to this list, but these are critical. The fear of the Lord, courage, a gentle and compassionate posture, wisdom, perseverance, consistency, and a close, personal walk with God. Now, let's shift gears just a little bit, and let's talk about our role as parents, who we are, and what do we do. I said this, we didn't talk about it long last time, but I said this last Sunday. We are the parents. It defines who we are when we have children. We are the parents. When the Duke of Windsor, after a visit to the United States, was asked what impressed him most about America, he replied, the way American parents obey their children. Bingo. He hit that nail on the head. You've seen it, right? Do any of you have that kid? Let's not be confused about this. We're the parents. This is going to sound harsh, but I just need to say it. We make the rules, we call the shots, we draw the lines, we make the decisions, we determine the schedules, we have the authority. Does that mean we never take input from our kids? No, of course not. We do. Does that mean we're cruel and heartless? I hope not. It simply means that we're the parents whom God has entrusted with the responsibility for these children. We become parents by having children. Then it's a matter of fulfilling those responsibilities either well or poorly. We're either good parents or bad ones, but we are the parents, and our responsibility is to steward our children well. They are a trust to us from God. When you've made a new acquaintance, a new neighbor, somebody at work, a new face at church, somebody at a ball game, the conversation usually turns to what you do. Have any of you ever answered the question, "Hi, my name's Tim. What do you do?" "Hi, my name's John. I'm a dad." That's what I do. "Oh, I work at Kenergy to pay the bills, but I'm a dad. I work at raising my children. What do you do?" Have anybody ever answered that question like that? No. Wouldn't be a bad idea, because that's what we are. "Hi, welcome to our mom's. My name's Cindy. What's your name?" "Hi, my name's Joan. What do you do?" "I'm a parent. I'm a full-time parent." That's what we are. We're the parents. Number 2, we are the primary evangelists in the lives of our children. We'll come back to this later when we talk about the goal of our discipline. But I want us to understand from the outset, we're the primary evangelists in the lives of our kids, and our ultimate goal in bringing them up is to see them converted. It's not to see them succeed in this world. It's not our reputation that's on the line. It's not our ease of life. It's not their behavior. It's their conversion. 2 Timothy 3:14 and 15. "You, however, continue in the things you have learned and become convinced of, knowing from whom you have learned them." Who did Timothy learn them from? Who? His mother and his grandmother. His first exposure to the gospel wasn't from Paul. He was already converted by the time Paul hooked up with Timothy. He got it from his mother and his grandmother. They were the primary evangelists in the lives of young Timothy. More on this later, but let me add here that if your kids are not converted, there's still a great deal you can do to train them and mold them and shape them prior to conversion. And it's often the case that God uses that early training in their lives as one of the means to bring about their conversion. I inadvertently left this book off the book list you have. This is called Your Child's Profession of Faith by a guy named Dennis Gunderson. Anybody have that? It's really helpful in helping you work through the maze of your children's conversion, because we desperately want them to be converted, and we want those early indicators of faith to be genuine and deep and true, and our temptation is to give them assurance before it's really legit, to give them assurance, and on the other hand, we don't want to discourage them, and boy, knowing when your children are converted is sometimes not the easiest thing to do. But this is a helpful book in your child's conversion. And I encourage you to look that up. Your Child's Profession of Faith by Dennis Gunderson. We're the primary evangelists in the lives of our kids. We're the primary intercessors for our children. You can distribute children more faithfully than anybody. You can teach them more diligently than anyone else. You can set the best example before them. You can love them more than anybody does. You can teach them to sit in church earlier than anybody else. You can get them to memorize the catechism faster than anybody else. But you can't change their hearts. That is God's business. But you can have business with God about changing the hearts of your children. And we better be having business with God. We're the primary intercessors for our children. Think about all the stuff your children have to go through on their way to adulthood. It makes running the gauntlet look pretty easy. Anybody ever see the movie First Night? That's an old movie. Okay, you got to find that movie, First Night. And Richard Gere is the guy who's the knight. And he's trying to win the hand of Lady Guinevere, and she's betrothed to, what was the king's name? I don't remember. Arthur. Thank you, King Arthur. And Richard Gere is Lancelot, And they have this gauntlet set up, and it's swinging axes and great big balls that'll knock you into a million pieces if you run into one. And you got to work your way down between things popping up from here and coming this way. And he runs the gauntlet, and he makes it through. And Guinevere is duly impressed. The movie's worth watching for that scene, okay? Helping our kids through the maze of stuff they've got to work through to adulthood is harder and more challenging than running the gauntlet. You think about it. How will they navigate safely through all the snares and traps and seductions and pitfalls and deceptions? How will they see through all the lies? How will they resist all the temptations? How will they keep their heads about them in a world gone crazy? How will they sort out right from wrong? How is it that they will one day make the faith of their fathers their own? Only as God works in their hearts. And we have access to God through fervent, persistent, believing prayer. So how are they going to make it through all this stuff? God has to keep them. And we have access to God. So we're the primary intercessors for our children. And I think we need to be very, very pointed and specific in our prayers for our kids and our grandkids. I remember standing over the crib of our boys every night, and as they grew, over their beds, asking God not only to save them, but Lord, will you protect them from the powers of darkness and from the wiles of the devil, and will you keep them from evil companions and influences, and keep them from getting involved in drugs and pornography, and keep them from a life of abandonment to sin, and deliver them from pride, and give them wisdom, and give them a love for God's word, and keep them sexually pure, and prepare them for their life's mate, and prepare a mate for them. We prayed for our 2 daughters-in-law long before our boys could walk. Before they could put 2 words together and make a sentence, we were praying for their wives. And God sent them 2 wonderful wives, gave us 2 great daughters-in-law. But pray. Nobody will pray for your kids like you will. And pray pointedly and specifically for your children. Okay. We're making progress. Okay. Number 4, we are the primary role models for our children. Like it or not, we are. We're either good ones or bad ones, but we're role models for our kids. One of the worst things you can do to your child is tell them, do as I say, and then live a very different life than what you've told them to live. Proverbs 4:11, I have directed you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in upright paths. How do you lead somebody? How do you lead somebody? You take them by the hand and they follow you. You don't lead somebody from behind. You don't lead them just by pointing out, yeah, go that way, son. No. You lead them. Come on, let me go. I'll show you. Lead them. I have led you in upright paths. Proverbs 23:26. Give me your heart, my son, and let your eyes delight in my ways. Watch me. This dad says, watch me. This mom says, watch me. Without a hint of boastful arrogance, this father, this mother says, watch my life. Listen to my speech. Watch what I do when we're on vacation. Watch me in the face of trial and hardship. Watch me respond to unjust criticism. Watch me when others give me credit for something. Watch how I am when no one else is watching. Watch how I am at home and in public. Watch how I spend my free time. Watch my work ethic. Watch how the fear of the Lord works itself out in my life. Watch how I fight against sin and resist temptation. Watch my repentance when I fall. Watch how quickly I acknowledge my wrong and ask for forgiveness. Watch how I love and respect and treat your mother. Watch how I love and respect and honor your dad. Watch how faithful I am to my friends. Watch how I give myself to the Word of God. Watch how I strive to exercise self-control. Watch how I put others before myself. Watch how I heartily enter into worship. I got more. I'm just taking a break here for a sec. Watch how I heartily enter into worship. You know, it just cranks my case. My wife always gets nervous when I start talking like this. It's when we're standing in worship and we're singing and our kids are standing right beside us. And dads, you are guilty Okay, maybe not every one of you. But dads more often are guilty of this than moms. We're standing there singing in worship. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saves. It's like, it looks like it's the most boring exercise on the planet. Your mouths are barely moving. You can barely hear your voice. I don't care if you can't carry a tune in a bucket. My oldest son cannot carry a tune in a bucket, but when he sings, he sings. And my heart is glad because I understand that he understands the value and place of worship, and his kids are watching him sing. Dads, enter into worship. I don't mean you have to be jumping all over the place, but at least enter into worship in a visible, tangible kind of way so that your kids are watching you. Let your eyes delight in my ways. Watch me, my son, when I worship. What is there that's more important? Let me lead you, my son, in the upright path of worship. Watch how I govern very carefully what's on TV. Watch how careful I am to spend time with God every day in prayer and in His Word. Watch how I keep my promises. Watch how we make principled decisions. Watch how we have fun. There's a biblical way to have fun. You know what it is? Whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do all to the glory of God. Do it with all your heart. Watch how we have fun. Watch how I guard my eyes and my tongue. Watch how we acknowledge God in everything. A man from the 17th century said, to give children good instruction and a bad example is but beckoning to them with the head to show them the way to heaven while we take them by the hand and lead them in the way to hell. Lead them. Let your eyes delight in my ways. Watch my life, my son, my daughter. We're role models. You'll never have the hearts of your children if they can't delight in your ways. There's my clock. Okay. I got 15 minutes before 6 o'clock, madam. I got 15 more minutes. You're fine. Make sure you tell your husband that. Okay. You guys are awful. Number 5, parents or teachers. We'll get started. We won't finish this tonight, okay? But we'll get started. Parents or teachers. They're teachers not because they're gifted to teach, but because they're parents. A father is a teacher not because he has children, but because he's a father. A mother is a teacher not because she has a gift to teach, but because she's a mother. We're teachers not because we've been to college and got a degree in education, but because we've been in the hospital and had a baby. You may never excuse yourself from teaching your children because you don't think you're gifted to teach. No, you dads, don't any of you dads ever say, I couldn't teach my way out of a wet paper bag, I'll let her do it. Don't you ever say that. Mom, don't you ever say, I couldn't teach my way out of a wet paper bag, I'll let him do it. No. If God made you a parent, He made you a teacher. Let me take you through Proverbs to see how this father taught his son. Most of what Proverbs says about parenting, it says in terms of fathers. There's over 50 references to fathers or to a father's word to his son. It's not that mothers are absent. You're not off the hook here. There are 13 references to mothers in these 31 chapters. But the way the book goes to fathers, and read, it says simple fathers are the heads of their homes. They're responsible for what goes on in their home. The buck stops with dads. Having said that, the book of Proverbs calls children to obey both. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. My son, observe the commandment of your father, and do not forsake the teaching of your mother. So just because it says more to fathers and mothers, moms, don't you think you're off the hook here? Disobedience to one is as bad as disobedience to the other. The joys and griefs of parenting belong to both fathers and mothers. What's Proverbs chapter 31 about? Come on, what's it about? About a woman, about the virtuous woman. You know where that came from? It's the words that Lemuel's mother taught him. Read that, the first section of Proverbs 31. The words that his mother taught him. So our fathers mentioned much more often than mothers in Proverbs. Mothers are certainly not out of the picture. In fact, most of what's said about fathers may also be applied in principle to mothers as well, simply because they're both the parents. So let's look at what it's like to be a parent teacher. Okay? This parent teacher is earnest and urgent in his teaching. And I don't mean by that parents are always intense when they're teaching their children. You can be earnest and urgent and very quiet. You can be earnest and urgent and calm. It's not always, listen to me when I'm talking to you. Okay? I'm not talking about intensity. I'm talking about earnestness and urgency. You won't teach your daughter about cooking the same way you'll teach her about the importance of sexual purity. Right? But when it comes to things like character and life issues, our children need to see and perceive that what we're teaching them is really, really important. There's something urgent about it, and they better pay close attention. 23 times in the book of Proverbs, the author uses the expression, my son. That's an earnest, warm appeal. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. Hear, O sons, give attention. Incline your ear to my sayings. Now then, my sons, listen to me, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. My son, keep my words and treasure my commandments within you. It's a crime that some children see their parents more earnest and urgent about their jobs, their hobbies, their clothes, their sports, their cars, decorating, or about their phones than they are about teaching their children. We must be earnest and urgent in our teaching. And if you're really earnest and urgent, you'll work at being faithful and consistent in it. It won't be an afterthought that you get to only when you have time. If you're earnest and urgent, you'll plan and schedule what and when you teach your children, and you'll be alert to spontaneous moments to teach them. Now, don't take that in some ironclad mechanical way. Life is full of unscheduled events and interruptions and routine and so forth. That's all the more reason we need to plan and schedule when and what to teach our children. I'm making a plug here for consistent, regular family worship. And you need a plan for that. And if you don't have one, I'll offer you one. Long story short, anybody have this? Oh, good. 2 or 3 of you do. This is a family worship guide for taking your children through the Old Testament. And one of the best things about this book is it keeps showing how the Old Testament is always pointing the way to Jesus. Okay? It looks big and intimidating. It's not. They're broken up into weekly. It's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. You get 2 days off. Okay? It's a helpful resource. But there needs to be a plan. There needs to be some structure. You need to have a regular time to do this with your children. There are other resources. I think I got a couple up here. There's long story short. The Jesus Storybook Bible by Salvador Jones is really, really good for younger children. And I don't know if you catechize your kids, but if you don't, you should. Okay, the Bible doesn't say, thou shalt catechize. But I'm telling you, you ought to catechize your children. Why? It's a great way of getting the truth ingrained into them. And there's a young man I know who went through our school years and years and years ago. He's married, has a kid. And a while back, he said, he might have said it to his dad. Was it to his dad? He was mad. He's not a Christian, okay? He was angry. And he said to his dad, why did they put that stuff in my brain? Why did they teach me that catechism at Heritage Christian School? I hate it. I can't get it out of my head. Success. Because the Lord may someday yet use those things that he can't get out of his mind to bring him to his knees in repentance and faith. Catechize your kids. Be earnest and urgent in your teaching. Number 2, this parent's teaching is, I'm sorry, I keep looking up there for a clock, because where I teach at Grace Reformed in the morning, they got a clock right in the back wall. We're doing okay. This parent's teaching is appropriately reasoned, and by reason I mean he often gives reasons and detaches arguments to enforce his pleas. I'm going to be really brief on this point. There's a place for simple, direct instruction without reasons, especially when our children are smaller, and even sometimes when our children are older. You don't have time. The situation doesn't give you the luxury of explaining with 6 reasons why he needs to do what you just said. Just do it, okay? But there are times when our instruction needs to be appropriately reasoned. The writer in Proverbs often attaches reasons. I'm not going to take time to read it, but what you see in red is the reason. This is the instruction. This is the reason why this is important. Again, in Proverbs 5 and 7, he's talking about he's arguing the case against immorality. This is the argument. This is the command. This is the reason. He really works out reasons why you don't need to go near the door of the adulteress's house. Here's why, my son. He argues the case. As teachers and as parents, we need to be appropriately reasoned in the things we present to our children. In so many cases, this parent's teaching is attractive. Proverbs 1, 8 and 9. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They're a graceful wreath to your head and ornaments about your neck. They're attractive. A graceful, okay, we don't wear wreaths around our heads. I got that. But that was an attractive, ornamental thing. It's a whole different ballgame to make our instruction as attractive as it can be. It's not difficult to bark orders and lay down laws and beat our kids into a dispirited and sullen compliance. That's pretty easy to do. And if you need lessons on that, I can give them to you. It's a piece of cake. But it's a whole different ballgame to make our instruction as attractive as possible. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable, but the mouth of the fools spouts folly. Proverbs 16. The wise in heart will be called discerning, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. Our teaching is attractive. Sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. I don't know if y'all can read that back there. Let me read it for you. It's easy. This is Paul Tripp in his book, Parenting. It's easy to be upset when children demonstrate over and over again that what they need is to be parented. What are your children doing when they cross the line and do something really outrageous? They're saying, Dad, I need a parent. They're saying they need to be parented. If you walk down the hallway mad because your children need correction again, you're mad because at that moment they need what every human being constantly needs, a parent's care. But if you walk down that hallway confessing your need of the Father's care, it is more likely that you will embrace the need of your children for the same care and to be tender as you give it. Don't be frustrated that you have to tell them again and again. How many times has God had to tell you, put a lid on it, sister? What? so much of some of the pills our kids are going to have to swallow are just plain bitter. No, you can't go to that movie. No, you can't go to spend the night with so-and-so. No, you can't buy that dress. No, you can't have the car tonight. But we don't have to give those pills with a ramrod. Sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. And so much of this will be determined by the general atmosphere we've cultivated in our homes. This goes back to having a gentle and compassionate posture. Is the atmosphere of our homes one of unconditional love and acceptance? Is it an atmosphere of self-control and measured response, or is it an atmosphere of knee-jerk ballistic reactions and drill sergeant lectures? What's the atmosphere? That'll go a long ways to making our teaching attractive to our kids. As parents, teaching is persistent and lifelong, ongoing. Proverbs 4:3 and 4. He starts teaching his son when he's young and tender. Proverbs 3:9 and 10, he's still teaching him when he has his own barns and produce. By the blessing of God, that persistence will pay off in that our children will not be able to shake our voice from their conscience. My son, observe the commandment of your father and do not forsake the teaching of your mother. Bind them continually on your heart, tie them around your neck. When you walk about, that is, when the parents aren't right there standing next to you. When you walk about, what your parents have said, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. When you awake, they will talk to you. Man, I want my kids hearing my voice in their head all the time. Long after they're out the door and down the road, I want them hearing my voice in their head. And if we're persistent in our teaching, God may bless that. As parents, teaching is unified. Dad and mom are on the same page. That may take some work, but you got to be on the same page. Standard procedure, okay? Standard SOP. You know what SOP is? Standard operating procedure. When Johnny comes to Dad, or Susie comes to Dad and says, "Hey, Dad, can I go over to so-and-so's house?" Automatic reaction by Dad's heart. What did your mother say? When they go to Mom and say, Mom, can we do blah, blah, blah? What did your dad say? Our kids aren't stupid. They'll play one against the other every chance they get. Oh, Mom already said no. Then the answer is no. Oh, Dad already said I couldn't do that. Then that's the answer. Mom and Dad got to be on the same page, okay? Okay, I'm almost, okay, we're just about there. And at 6:01, okay? We started late. Thank you, Jared. This parent's teaching is unified. It is observant and opportunistic. He or she is alert to what is going on and quick to seize teachable moments. That's what I mean by observant and opportunistic. Look for these moments. Proverbs 24:30-34. I passed by the field. You know this text. He passed by the field of the sluggard, saw it all broken down. Teaching opportunity. And he learned from that. In chapter 1, he observed the ways of sinful companions and drew lessons for his son. In chapter 6, he watched the ways of the ant. In chapter 7, he observed the ways of the naive and the adulteress. In chapter 23, he observed the ways of the drunkard. In chapter 26, it was the ways of the fool. And in chapter 30, it was ants, badgers, locusts, and lizards, teaching us the wisdom of preparation, caution, cooperation, and ambition. He jumped on every opportunity that arose to teach something to his son. So the wise dad and the wise mom will take what they see going on around them, especially those things that arrest the attention of our kids, and turn them into opportunities for teaching. You're driving down the road and you see a funeral procession pass. There's a teachable moment. Dad, what's that big black car? Oh, that's called a hearse. And there's a body in that hearse that they're about to bury in the ground. Let me talk to you about death. It's a teachable moment. Natural disasters, storms, floods, tornadoes, drought, a beautiful sunset, a dead bird. Dad, there's a dead bird in the driveway. Do you know, son? That bird didn't hit the pavement apart from the knowledge of God. God knew, God ordained that bird to hit the pavement today. And you're of more value than many sparrows. And what's the difference between you and a bird? You're made in the image of God. You have a soul. That's a teachable moment. A school shooting is a teachable moment. The disappointing loss in the last second of the soccer game is a teachable moment. The awards program at school is a teachable moment. The referee's bad call in the game is a teachable moment. Even the girls' basketball game. It's a teachable moment. Your child's friend's parents' divorce. The incorrect change at the store. The movie you just watched together as a family and the worldview it represented. And when he sees an opportunity, this dad or mom seizes it quickly, or at least stores it up to talk about later when he can. He keeps his eyes open for teachable moments. Proverbs 4, when I was a son to my father, tender and the only son on the side of my mother, then he taught me and said to me. Tender years are teachable moments. But teachable moments like Kodak moments. You know, you got to get the camera just right, and there's that one moment. And if you miss it, you miss the picture. If you don't seize them, teachable moments are gone. And sometimes it's more important to be late for your tea time, or your meeting, or dinner, or your workout, or your movie. Sometimes it's more important to miss the last minute of the game because you've got a teachable moment staring you in the face, and you've got to choose. Is it the end of the world if you miss a teachable moment? No. It's the end of that teachable moment. It's not the end of the world. But you know what happens when you start to miss teachable moments? It becomes easier and easier to miss them. And if that becomes a pattern, then pretty soon you don't even see them anymore when they're staring you right in the face. This parent's teaching is observant and opportunistic. And then the last category, we'll take this up next time, and we'll spend some time with it. This parent's teaching is aimed at the heart, out of the heart of the issues of life. And if all we do is structure our teaching and our rules and our parenting to affect outward behavior, and we've missed the heart, we've not gotten to the root of things with our children. So we'll talk about this next time.